Welcome to Learn, Talk, and Design, where I teach myself a new subject, then teach it to you, and then design my persona into something reminiscent of said subject. Today's edition is the Gyaru. Disclaimer before I begin, I do not claim that I am a professional or an expert or that I know everything. I'm doing my best to research in the most efficient way, but misinformation is real and unfortunately the internet is full of it. If I am wrong or you have input, please comment and I'll do my best to reply. I do encourage discussion. Anyways, Uh, gyros are a subject of interest of mine. I've seen many animes calling an expressive character, usually a woman, a young woman, a gal, or a gyri. And these animes include Blue Period, especially in the manga, Marin Kitagawa from My Dress Up Darling, a personal favorite of mine, and also these YouTube videos describing their gyro makeover in Japan. From first glance, I love the colorful outfits. They were something I personally wanted to incorporate into my own art, but I hated the thought of getting context wrong or potentially offending anyone or honestly just kind of looking dumb. So yeah, Gairus are best defined as a Japanese subculture of fashion, which is associated with bold, colorful fashions, loud personalities, and surprisingly, a strong sense of community. It was popularized in Shibuya, Tokyo in the 1990s. The term had been around before that, the most common source seemingly pointing to a line of Wrangler jeans called gals in the 1970s. But here's where the history kind of surprised me. It seems that our image of the Gyaru actually began with the Kogairu, which were rich Japanese teenage girls who began to alter their uniforms and dye their hair in rebellion of their harsh beauty norms of in Japan in general. These girls were usually attending private school, where I believe that the standards would be slightly harsher. These girls often had the money to spend on partying and hanging out, and were honestly viewed as very positive because of how fun they were. Uh, from here, there was an emergence of Ganguru. And also, I might not pronounce everything correct. Apologies. But anyways, while the Kogaru were schoolgirls in the version you often see in animes, such as Marin, Ganguru is what the media sees outside of anime usually, or what I imagine a Gyaru to be, which is the tan skin, the bold animal prints, the more Y2K look, the big lashes, and the white highlights on the skin. These were often considered cheaper than their Kokairu counterparts, due to them being in a lower class standard, or usually a lower class. And the more popular this culture became, the more negativity began to pop up. In reality, Diners were meant to be a very sister like community, loyal to their friends, full of advice and love. Uh, there was often lots of being tips being shown around. There was magazines full of them. Instead of having idols necessarily as a Gairu, they would often photograph just random Gairus off the street, and you were often encouraged to wear your best Gairu look in the hopes that you would be scouted, which I personally thought was super cool. Um, but from there, a lot of the media outside of like Gairu magazines in particular, they were like, "Oh, they're like prostitutes." Can I say that on YouTube? But yeah, uh, but in reality, they did not make up the majority of teenage prostitution. Of course, there's always exceptions, but Gairus were not the main face at all. They also had a surprisingly positive effect on the economy. Japan was struggling after a recent inflation crisis, and whenever the gyros started coming around, the culture focusing on partying and indulgence, like you wouldn't go get your hair done alone. You would often go with your friends and your nails and go shopping, go partying, and karaoke. And so shops began to reopen. Even the Shibuya 109, which from what I understand is really popular, it was dying at the time. And it was under the threat of being closed forever. But due to the gyros, they brought back life into it. Um, there are also a lot of subcultures and subgenres of Gyra other than the Kogals and the Gangaros. You have the Hime Gyaru, which is a almost Lolita sense of a Gyru, with pastels, lace, bows. The Kogairu, like we mentioned, which is the schoolgirl. The Shiru Gairu, which is the no tan, the heavy makeup. The Ganguru, which is the tan. And the Yamadanba. I am not pronouncing that correctly. But they were an even more extreme version of the Ganguru. If you thought the Ganguru were bright and flashy, now these were bright and flashy. But the fun thing is, one subculture did not judge the other. They were very inclusive, and many of these women went into jobs such as beauty school, estheticians. They would become like store clerks, but that would give you advice, and they were often called younger sister, big sister, depending on if you were older or more seasoned. And I love that for them. I wish there was more of that today. And of speaking of said community, when I was researching, I found an article about how gyro culture is being lost through social medias, especially such as TikTok. Now, I don't disagree necessarily because it's hard to have a culture without the context. However, with a culture that is so focused on community and advice and love, I find it hard to believe that TikTok would not be the perfect version for a guru. You have people stumbling across just random videos of other women who are dressing up in this way, maybe perhaps giving tips, talking about what they do for their makeup. And honestly, like I love that. I wish there was more to that in today's world. Um, but yeah, now I'm just gonna mention my art just a little bit because it's been on screen. The first half, I was just doing my persona and to reminiscent of different styles. The middle one was more of a Kogairu. I have red hair currently, or like dyed red tips, so I wanted to keep the red. And it was fun to kind of experiment with different outfits and stuff I honestly never would have thought about. And then here I am working on a magazine picture because of how important magazines were to the Gairu culture. I hope you enjoyed my redesign of my persona and my art and me yapping. Uh, I enjoyed this process a lot, actually. I enjoyed the research, the drawing, and then the yapping about it. I even, just to be silly, did the makeup on myself. I think I needed to go bolder. um, but not to be too Debbie Downer or anything. I started this project in order to not only better my art and my designs and to broaden my knowledge, but also to get more comfortable talking out loud. I am very passionate about a lot of things, but I tend to stutter and get nervous, so I figured that this would be a good way to talk about things I enjoy in a cohesive fashion. And also maybe even find some friends and people who love art and fashion and other things just like I do. And learning. I love to learn. um, so yeah. If I encourage you to design your own guru, and if I really, really like it, if you post it in the comments, I'll redraw it for you for free. So be sure to comment and design. But if you like this, please subscribe, like, and comment because this was a lot of fun and I want to do more of these. And like I said, also meet more people who maybe want to join me along for this. But yeah, have a great day.